Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't hide anything. So my view was she shouldn't have had the weed in her house. And obviously, there had to be enough where the smell was overwhelming, and law enforcement, on a call to protect her, found, oops, we got to do it. Substantial evidence. If I went to bed last night, there was no snow on the ground. I woke up this morning, there was snow, hardly likely in Atlanta today. And we know it snowed somehow. They smell.
Welcome to the Gossip Channel. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We're growing with you and because of you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Once we hit that milestone, a special prize will be waiting for you. Stay tuned. And now, let's get into the topic. No, ma'am, Lala's drug arrest ain't no secret, but the way she moved in that courtroom just turned the heat up. Word in the street says she strolled in like it was nothing. No worries at all. And now the judge is straight fuming. This little too cool act might be the very thing that gets her locked up. Stick around, cause we're about to break it all down. It all popped off when they stormed Glow's spot on Saturday night, July 19th, 2025. While most folks were posted up or cooling at home, GloRilla was out in Indianapolis shutting down the WNBA All-Star Game halftime, spitting "Let Her Cook," "Typa," and TGI like a boss. Shorty was on cloud nine, shining bright on one of the biggest stages in women's sports, not knowing her whole world was about to get flipped inside out back in Georgia. Around 1:30 in the morning, while Glow was probably still riding high from her performance or maybe heading back to her hotel, three masked-up suspects pulled a move on her crib in the St. Marlowe subdivision, Forsyth County. This wasn't no sloppy smash and grab by some desperate heads chasing pocket change. Nah, this was cold, calculated, premeditated street business. And according to her legal team, these grimy players most likely knew exactly she wasn't home when they hit. But yo, this is where it really gets messy. Glow wasn't the only one tied to that spot. Her family was inside, chilling, thinking they were safe, until these grimy burglars came through and shattered that peace. Imagine being in someone else's home, feeling secure, then hearing glass break and footsteps creeping where they don't belong. And trust, this wasn't some rookie grab a flat screen and run situation. Nah, these suspects went straight for the high-value jewelry and dipped, which screams they knew exactly what to snatch and where it was stashed. That kind of inside knowledge makes me wonder who was really in on this. Somebody out here was clearly feeding the streets info on Glow's lifestyle, what she rocks, what she owns, and exactly when she wouldn't be home. And here's where it turns real gangster, no exaggeration. One of the folks inside that house was strapped up and ready, letting shots fly to protect the spot, sending those intruders scattering like roaches when the lights hit. Thank God no one caught a bullet, not the people defending the home, and not even the suspects, though they sure earned it. This part's key, cause it proves whoever was holding it down wasn't out to drop bodies, just doing what needed to be done to protect the family and the property. So the family did exactly what any law-abiding folks are supposed to do. When something foul pops off, you call the boys in. They were the victims of a violent street hit. They defended themselves by the book, and they wanted these criminals caught and buried under the jail. But what happened next? Man, it'll make your blood boil and have you questioning everything you thought you knew about how police really move in America. Deputies pulled up, ready to investigate, cause shots were fired, which is serious business. Bullets flew, crimes were committed, evidence had to be locked down. Major crimes and the crime scene unit even got involved, showing they were treating it like the violent felony it was, until something shady happened that flipped this whole case on its head. While digging into the scene, these deputies suddenly claimed they caught a whiff of some loud, that strong, skunky smell they say screams illegal narcotics. Now, hold up. Let me paint this picture crystal clear. These cops came out to handle a real violent street situation. Shots fired, property snatched, dangerous criminals still running free. But instead of locking in on catching those armed burglars, they swerved completely and started zoning in on some weed smell. Next thing you know, they're calling up the Lanier Regional Drug Task Force and moving to get a search going for the property. Just think about all the resources getting burned up here. A whole drug task force, extra cops, stacks of paperwork for search warrants, all while the real criminals who terrorized this family were slipping further away by the minute. When they finally ran that search, they claimed they uncovered a significant amount of marijuana in the master bedroom closet, plus some unspecified Schedule I controlled substance. WSB-TV reported it was about 2 pounds of loud and some THC wax they scooped up in their little treasure hunt. But here's the part that'll make you want to flip a table. GloRilla was hundreds of miles away, killing it at a nationally televised sporting event with thousands of witnesses and cameras catching her every move. Shorty had the kind of airtight alibi most folks could only dream of, yet somehow, some way, she was about to be the only one catching charges in this whole twisted mess. They claimed the weed and other substances were sitting in plain view, which raises some ugly questions. If it was really out like that, why didn't the people staying in the house, folks who were supposed to care about her name and reputation, handle it before calling the cops? Better yet, why didn't they clean house the moment the burglars dipped, before the law pulled up? And here's a little street wisdom everyone needs to soak in. The people you trust will either hold you down or hang you out to dry. And you usually don't find out which until it's way too late. Off the drugs they claimed to find during the burglary investigation, authorities went ahead and issued arrest warrants. And here's where it gets even wilder. The victim of a violent home invasion, who wasn't even in the same state when it happened, was suddenly staring down serious felony charges that could send her upstate for years. We're talking about a whole twisted flip in the script. Now, let's get into how Glo's legal team came out swinging, the wave of public outrage that followed, and the ugly pattern in how the system really moves when it's dealing with our people. But first, we gotta break down what happened the moment GloRilla found out she was wanted, and how her reaction sparked even louder debates about celebrity justice in America, and how they straight up did her dirty. Now we're at the part where this whole thing takes a wild turn, and you need to catch every detail because it shows exactly how the justice system can twist things when they want to make an example out of somebody. What went down next was straight up controversial, and the way it unfolded proves they can flip the script on you faster than you can blink. Before you could even finish saying, "Free my homie GloRilla," she kept it all the way real and turned herself in to the Forsyth County Jail on Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, after warrants dropped over the drugs found during the burglary investigation. Think about that for a second. Shorty could have dipped, could have played hard to get, but instead, she walked in on her own. She could have fought extradition, hired some high-powered lawyers to stall it out, or tried to make the whole mess vanish with some behind-the-scenes moves. But nah, she did what real ones do. Faced it head-on, chest out, ready for whatever came next. But the charges they threw at her? No light work. They slapped her with 2 felony counts under Georgia law: felony possession of marijuana for having more than an ounce of loud, and possession of a Schedule I controlled substance. And this ain't no slap on the wrist situation. If they nailed her on that felony marijuana charge alone, she was staring down 1 to 10 years behind bars. Let me make this crystal clear. While the grimy crew that broke into her spot and traumatized her family was still roaming free in the streets, GloRilla was the one staring at the possibility of spending up to a whole decade locked down, all because of substances found in her own crib during an investigation into crimes committed against her. If that ain't backwards logic, I don't know what is. She bonded out the same day for $22,260, but the damage was already done. Her rep was taking hits, and the weight of those serious charges was stacking heavy. Picture it. You just crushed a major sporting event performance, feeling like you're on top of the world, only to come back home and find out you've got a warrant with your name on it, and you're staring down real prison time. The legal side of this just makes it even nastier. While weed's been decriminalized in a bunch of states, Georgia still plays by old rules, except for a tiny allowance of low THC oil for medical use. That felony tag for having over an ounce? It shows just how strict Forsyth County still is with drug laws. This ain't California or Colorado we're talking about. This is Georgia, still stuck in that 1980s just say no era, but GloRilla wasn't about to take it lying down. On July 24th, 2025, she jumped on social media to address it head on, and what she dropped was nothing short of explosive. Her post on X was pure flames. She wrote, "My house got home invaded Saturday while I was in Indianapolis performing for the WNBA All-Star Game. And instead of focusing on finding the suspects, they focused on some cannabis. 1, no, I wasn't busted. 2, my house got robbed. 3, I wasn't home. Long story short, my house gets home invaded, and I'm the only one that gets arrested." Peep how she played this smart. She made sure to stress she was at a huge, nationally televised event, locking in an ironclad alibi. She even used the word cannabis instead of weed or loud, likely on her legal team's advice to keep it sounding clean and professional, all while spotlighting just how absurd this whole thing really is. The victim of a violent crime was somehow the only one arrested, but Glo didn't stop there. She proved she knows the industry playbook when she flipped this whole mess into a hustle, dropping $40 merch with her mugshot on it. The move drew comparisons to Travis Scott's post-legal drama merch drop, and even TMZ called her mugshot great looking. That's what you call turning lemons into pure lemonade, literally making money off something meant to crush her career. Meanwhile, her legal team wasn't here to play either. GloRilla's attorneys, Marissa Goldberg and Drew Finley from the Finley Law Firm, dropped a statement that was basically a declaration of war against the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. They called her arrest a disturbing look into just how warped law enforcement priorities have gotten. And listen, this is where her legal team's argument gets real spicy, the kind of thing that should have every person in America worried about police overreach. First point, GloRilla was the victim of a violent home invasion, not a suspect. Sounds like basic common sense, right? But apparently these badges needed it spelled out for them like they'd never seen a case where the person getting robbed wasn't the criminal. Second point, her family, the ones who were actually there during the burglary, did exactly what they should have done by calling the police. But instead of staying locked in on the armed break-in, these officers shifted gears to what they called a small amount of marijuana, which flat out contradicts the sheriff's claim of finding a significant amount. Third point, and this one's the most damning, law enforcement went all out to get search warrants and arrest warrants for GloRilla, who hadn't even been home in a minute. Yet not a single arrest warrant for the violent burglars. Her attorneys called it absolutely unbelievable and a total waste of tax dollars. They weren't just defending their client, they were calling out an entire system that seemed more focused on making headlines by cuffing a celebrity than actually solving violent street crimes. GloRilla's legal team shined a light on the trauma her family went through during that home invasion, while pointing out how little was being done to catch the real culprits. Think about it. Innocent people got terrorized in their own home, had guns in their faces, feared for their lives, and the ones responsible were still roaming free, while the victim was the one being prosecuted. But the sheriff's office wasn't budging. Sheriff Ron Freeman stepped up to address it, saying the homeowner was indeed a victim of a serious crime. And we are committed to bringing the suspects to justice. At the same time, we must continue to uphold and enforce the law in all aspects of this case. That line right there sums up the whole problem. They admitted she was a victim, yet still treated her like a criminal. A legal expert broke down exactly how they tried to justify that mess. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office said the burglary case was still active, with detectives claiming they'd recovered physical and trace forensic evidence from the suspects. But as of July 27th, 2025, not a single arrest had been made for the actual break-in. Let me spell it out. Days after this went down, with all the power of a full county sheriff's office. Nothing. A whole regional drug task force and major crimes detectives. Yet, they couldn't catch 3 burglars who left physical evidence behind, but somehow managed to arrest the victim within days of the crime. The streets reacted exactly how you'd expect. Twitter was lit, with people dragging the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office for focusing on GloRilla's drug charges instead of the armed burglary. Glo herself pointed out that no suspects had been arrested after her home was hit, but she was the one cuffed up for weed possession. Folks online weren't having it, saying Forsyth police straight up did her dirty. The story blew up everywhere. Washington Post, TMZ, Fox 5 Atlanta, WSB-TV, CNN, and The Guardian, all hammering on how backwards it was that Glo was both the victim and the one being arrested. When you've got this many major outlets all running the same story with the same angle, that tells you just how bad this really was. But now it's time to zoom out and ask the tough questions, like who exactly did Glo have around her that night? Was this just terrible luck or something a lot more calculated? The real tea here touches on loyalty, trust, and who's really in your corner. We've already broken down the basic facts of this mess. Now we're stepping into the deeper, more controversial questions that got the whole hood buzzing, but the mainstream won't touch. Because while everyone's focused on whether the cops overreached, and yeah, they clearly pulled something foul, there's another side to this that digs into some uncomfortable truths. This is about street loyalty, and the people you choose to keep close when you finally make it to the top. Let's keep it all the way real about the elephant in the room that everybody tiptoes around but won't say out loud. How did GloRilla end up being the only one catching charges when she wasn't even in the same state? The answer opens the door to some disturbing possibilities that should worry anybody who's ever trusted someone with their freedom, their name, or their life. And this whole mess lit up conversations about a bigger problem, how Black Americans still get hit disproportionately hard with marijuana-related charges. While this is absolutely real and part of a bigger pattern of injustice in the system, I want to zero in on something even more important for our people to understand. The folks you trust can either protect you or destroy you. And sometimes you don't know which it is until it's way too late. Now, let's walk through this logically. 3 armed burglars storm into GloRilla's spot. Family members are inside, traumatized by these violent intruders. Shots are fired to defend the property, the criminals take off, and the family calls the police. And here's the part you gotta remember. This step right here is where the whole story starts twisting out of control. There was a solid gap of time between when the cops got called and when they finally showed up to start their investigation. And in that window, everybody in that house knew the law was on the way. They knew there'd be questions, searches, and heavy scrutiny. They knew that GloRilla, as the homeowner and a celebrity, was gonna face the most exposure and risk. So here's my question to y'all. If you really cared about protecting someone who was providing for you, giving you a roof over your head, and whose success was probably putting food in your mouth, wouldn't your first move be to make sure there was nothing in that house that could get them jammed up? This ain't about victim blaming. GloRilla is clearly the victim here, both of violent street drama and police overreach. But it does bring up some serious questions about the people in her inner circle and whether they really had her back when it counted most. Think about it. The weed was found in the master bedroom closet, which was obviously her private space. The folks staying in her crib would have known that. They would have known that anything found in her bedroom was gonna get pinned on her. They would have known she was the one facing the biggest risk. Yet somehow, that evidence sat right where the law could find it and where it would do maximum damage to her life and career. This wasn't GloRilla's first run-in with Georgia law enforcement. Back in April 2024, she was arrested in Gwinnett County for DUI after making an illegal U-turn at a red light. Police claimed they smelled both weed and alcohol. That prior incident adds some weight to her 2025 arrest, showing a pattern of legal heat in the same state.
Absolutely. If someone who is charged with a crime volunteers, gives him, or in this case, herself up, the prosecutors, the DA's office, and the DA's office recites it's very good, they will likely reduce this, depending on the amount, could easily be reduced to a misdemeanor. But again, it depends on the amount and how it was packed.
Do you know who I am? No, no, ma'am. Oh.
Got a search warrant, and authorities discovered what they called a significant amount of marijuana in a bedroom closet.
And here's where the story connects to something darker in the entertainment world. This whole situation reminded a lot of folks of what happened to Juice WRLD, where the people around him were right there during his legal troubles. Sure, the circumstances were different, but the echoes of how it all went down are hard to ignore. The core question still stands. When somebody hits celebrity status and becomes the cash cow, are the people around them truly loyal or just there for the perks? One analyst nailed it. Why didn't they get that mess out of the house and bury it for glow? See, a lot of folks don't fully get the real meaning of snitching. It's not just sitting there talking to the cops. In many celebrity circles, there's an unspoken rule that everyone eats off the star's success, and in return, they protect the star at all costs. But when legal trouble knocks, it's suddenly every person for themselves. The ones living in luxury, off GloRilla's grind, staying in her house, enjoying her generosity, somehow couldn't spare 5 minutes to make sure she stayed clean, protecting her from a situation that could have wrecked her career and sent her upstate for a decade should have been priority one. But we also got to talk about the law enforcement side, because their moves were just as shady, only in a different way. The fact that they went after GloRilla for drug charges while the burglars stayed free was seen by many as yet another example of racial bias in policing. And this ain't just talk, it's a documented pattern that's been studied for years. When you're a young, successful black woman in the South, you're already moving with a target on your back. Add celebrity, money, and influence to the mix, and you become an even bigger prize for law enforcement looking to make headlines and flex their tough-on-crime image, even if it means ignoring actual violent criminals just to prosecute somebody over a plant. A legal expert broke down the bigger picture of what that says about the system, and here's the wild part. Despite all the legal chaos, GloRilla still hit the WNBA All-Star stage just hours after the burglary and kept her career rolling. She was even locked in to headline her first annual Glow Bash in Memphis on July 25, 2025, with artists like Mooney Long and Rob 49. The fact that she could still keep her professional commitments in the middle of all this mess, that's next-level focus. Handling this legal nightmare while still showing up for her career took insane strength and professionalism. Her debut album, Glorious, dropped in 2024, and bangers like YALO and TGIF cemented her as one of hip-hop's fastest rising stars, with co-signs from legends like Rihanna and even a trip to the White House in March 2024. This wasn't just some mid-level celeb with a little legal trouble. This was a major name in the making, respected by the biggest in the game, and even recognized at the highest political level. The stakes were serious. If convicted on that felony marijuana possession charge, GloRilla could be looking at 1 to 10 years in prison, and the Schedule I controlled substance charge could bring even more time, depending on what it was and how much. Think about that. A woman who fought her whole life to escape the streets, built a career off pure talent and grind, supported her family and created opportunities for others, was now staring down the possibility of losing it all because of substances found in her own home after she was the victim of a violent crime. As of the latest reports, the burglary investigation is still open, with the sheriff's office claiming they're chasing forensic evidence. But the fact that no arrests have been made for the actual suspects keeps the fire burning for GloRilla's team and supporters. Weeks later, the violent criminals who terrorized her family are still out there walking free. While their victim is still stuck facing felony charges, this whole case is a blueprint for what's broken in our justice system's priorities. It shows how law enforcement can lose sight of the real mission, protecting innocent people and catching dangerous criminals, in favor of flashy arrests that make headlines and pad their stats. It also shines a light on how the people closest to celebrities can fail them when it matters most. GloRilla's clapback, flipping her mugshot into merch, speaking out publicly, and locking in top-tier legal help, proves she knows the game and how to fight it. But let's be real, she should have never had to fight this battle in the first place. The streets are watching, and this case will be remembered as proof of how fast the system can flip the script on you and why it's vital to keep people who'll truly hold you down when it counts. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you subscribe to the Gossip channel for more.